Hello YouTube and welcome to another video on the Ashen Chevalier. We'll be going through the intermission of Charles of Colesdale 2 this time. Let's find out how Rean handles being aboard the Noble Alliance's flagship, the Pantagruel, and what he has to say in regard to Duke Caien's proposition to them. Let's get to it. Into the pits of Gehenna. The intermission opens on the outside of the Pantagruel. We can see that Valamar is strapped up on the top, and inside on the bridge are Duke Caien, Vita, Clotilde, Crow, Rufus, and Rean. The Duke starts with telling Rean that they do not wish for the war to go on any longer than necessary, reminding him that the reason for this war was the departed Chancellor's behaviour being too unreasonable to justify turning a blind eye. But now that he is gone, they should join and turn back the hands of time to the good old days of the Empire. Rean in turn reminds him of the Alliance's misdeeds, including occupying Heimdall and taking every citizen hostage, imprisoning the Imperial family, and being in league with the enemy nation that destroyed Guerilla Fortress. The Duke tells Rean that he wishes for the Ashen Knight to stand on his side, essentially putting an end to the war without needing to fight much more. Rufus adds on about the psychological effects the Panzer Soldaten and Divine Knights have on people. Vita continues, as humans, we are terrified of giant beings bearing human form, and if that is true for the Soldats, it would be the same for the Divine Knights too. Rean is eventually escorted to a room where he thinks on what was just talked about. Of course, if he did agree, that would mean putting an end to the war and so reducing the number of victims, freeing Galise and Princess Alfin, being friends with Crow, but it's not that simple. Crow soon enters the room and Rean understandably isn't that excited to see him right now. They sit down to eat a fish burger, chips and onion rings cooked by Crow, and they talk a little. Rean asks about Crow's past. He used to live in the Jurai SEZ, then known as Jurai City, on the northwest coast of Zemuria. Around 20 years ago, the Northumbrian disaster struck, where much of the Principality of Northumbria was turned to Sol. This meant trading dwindled, and so the prosperity of the region began to fade. Still, they had local septium mines, fishing, and historical landmarks which could be used to get trade going again, and also help Northumbria. It was Crow's grandfather that pushed this approach. He was the last mayor of Jurai and his only living relative, as he lost his mum and dad early. 10 years ago, they received a proposal from the Erebonian government to build a train line from Heimdall to Jurai. The city council supported this, and therefore Crow's grandfather was forced to accept as well. The result was essentially the restoration of its previous prospering. Everything became a target for investment, although it meant that everyone only cared about making money. His grandfather sensed something was off and tried to get the situation under control. At some point, someone blew up the bridge and the Imperial government blamed Jurai for the lack of national security and threatened to withdraw all of their capital. Shares plummeted, no one knew who the culprit was, and chaos reigned. Shortly after, Imperial Chancellor Gilead Osborne personally went to Jurai and offered them a second proposal. The Imperial army would see to the repairs and future security of the bridge. In exchange, the assistance and safekeeping would continue and Jurai would come under the Empire as a special economic zone. Crow's grandfather was opposed, as the timing was just too convenient. Despite his efforts, however, the citizens and merchants alike jumped at the offer as it posed a vastly improved financial position. During that, they conveniently found the culprit behind the railway incident, his grandfather. Due to the opposition that ensued, he eventually resigned as mayor and Jurai became a part of the Empire, both on the same day. Shortly after he passed away, without any family remaining, Crow left it all behind and wandered the land where he had met Caien, who indulged his hatred for the Chancellor, and so began the Imperial Liberation Front. He also met Vita around this time, who took him to a place below the city of Ordis where the Azure Knight Ordine slept. Passing all of the trials placed before him, Crow was able to get Ordine to see him as his awakener, and so he enrolled in a military academy near the capital where he met Toa, Angelica and George. Crow reminds Rean to consider what he wants to do deep down and what his goals are before making his decision. As he leaves, he tells Rean that there is a really cute visitor on the second floor and that she'd perk right up if she saw him. Rean takes some time to visit the other guests on the ship, so I'll summarize what they talked about quickly before getting to the main event. S, or Scarlet of the Imperial Liberation Front, is the first person we'll go to. She invites Rean in and begins to prepare some tea. Sat down, they discuss how rich the tea fragrance is, commenting that of course it must be the best of the best for somebody like Duke Cayenne. Scarlet highlights that Rean is from a noble family too, so they must have a rich sense as well. Rean tells her that they live a relatively modest lifestyle considering barons aren't actually that rich. It seems Scarlet's family were relatively wealthy farmers and may have actually been more well off than Rean's, almost like celebrities. Scarlet learned her fighting style from the holy city of Altaria, where the high seat of the Septian Church is to Rean's disbelief. It's a Templar sword, a traditional weapon in the church, and while she studied to be a sister, she was trained how to use it. With Rean further in disbelief that there could be sisters who are being trained to use the same type of weapon in such a holy city, Scarlet tells Rean that there are more things in this world that you don't know that you could possibly imagine. With that, she cuts the story short and leaves the decision to join in Rean's hands. V for Vulcan of the Imperial Liberation Front is up next. He has the utmost respect for Crow and they all look up to him. Considering Crow's game is to see this war through to the end, Rean wonders if the rest have a similar reason. V doesn't really care about the war. He is a former Jaeger and can hold his own. If they disband, he will find something else to do. Rean can't defend the assassination of the Chancellor or what they did near Trista, but he'd be happy if they did disband. V wonders why Rean is being so nice, to which he acknowledges the crimes he has committed won't vanish, but no one wants this war to go on any longer. The cycle of hatred has gone on long enough. V cuts the niceties off and reminds Rean that he should be worrying about himself, given that he has a tough road ahead of him whether or not he joins the Alliance. Still, if they meet on the battlefield, Rean should show him what he's got. Rean excuses himself and leaves the room, wondering if V has lost his spark, as it seemed that his life's goal was to kill the Chancellor, and now he isn't sure what to do anymore. Rean notices Blue Blanc, the Phantom Thief, sitting on a table in the open area at the center of the ship. Eventually sitting down to have a non-alcoholic drink with Blue Blanc, he tells Rean a number of interesting stories, mostly stories from the previous games, the Sky and the Crossbow arcs. Rean remembers that parts of Erebonia also suffered from the Orbital shutdown, impressed by the extent of the event in Labelle. Blue Blanc moves on to the interest he has in Rean. Naturally, as the Ashen Knight's pilot, but more so in the ogre power that Rean holds. He also talks about Prince Oliver, possibly thinking he is the second coming of Drycalls. However, Rean remembers a conversation from the first game where Oliver essentially seemed to be calling Class 7 the fresh new wind, which will push the darkness of this country back. Duvili next. Rean for some reason just wanders into her room without actually knocking, so of course Duvili shouts at him and tells him to know his place instead of barging into her room unannounced. Moving straight on, Duvili states that her lord is the 7th Anguis, not the 2nd Anguis, Vita Clotilde. Rean likens her title as the strongest knight of all to Saint Sandlot, the leader of the Eisenritter. Rean asks why Duvili isn't an enforcer like Blue Blanc and Sharon. Duvili explains that enforcers are selected by the society's leader, the Grand Master. They must be burdened by some kind of darkness in order to be given a number. However, the numbers and strength do not hold any correlation. Rean compliments Duvili, making her embarrassed. He tells her that it makes sense she wouldn't have a number, as she doesn't seem to be the kind of person to hold any darkness within her. Rather, she exudes righteousness. Duvili does blush and stumble through her words, eventually chasing Rean out of her room. Rean senses someone in the room next door, and it seems that the door is open, so he walks in once again. Altina lays resting inside. Rean comments that she must be close to Milliam's age considering she looks so childlike laying there. Soon she wakes up and notices Rean, subsequently calling Clown Soleus to apprehend the intruder. Altina confirms that if Rean did have any inappropriate motives, Clamsalaeus would have attacked him. Since he didn't, she recalls it. She wonders if Rean has any questions, and although he didn't really know she was in the room, if she's offering, then why not? So, what are her reasons for helping the Alliance? She was ordered to do so. Why does she have a puppet just like Milliam's? She can't answer that, as all information regarding Clamsalaeus is confidential. And just who is she? Altina doesn't understand the depth of this question. So Rean gives up and tells her it doesn't matter, regardless, she's the one that kidnapped his sister and the princess, ordered to or not, he doesn't think he'll ever be able to forgive her. Altina is visibly taken back, and so Rean apologizes. He at least understands that she didn't abduct them of her own free will. As Rean is leaving, Altina tells him she belongs to a place called the Black Workshop, and they loaned her to the Noble Alliance. Rean gives her the infamous head pat, and thanks for the information before leaving. Zeno and Leonidas sense Rean outside and tell him to come in. Rean wonders why they are being so nice, and they assure him that they aren't on a battlefield, so why would they fight? They are glad to hear that Fee is doing well enough in school and putting her heart into succeeding. It's no wonder they seem to be almost like her parents in that regard. Rean tries to understand why they left her when their leader was killed in a battle against his sworn enemy. The two of them wonder how close Fee and Rean are and if he has made any moves on her, but he just wants to understand why they would have left her, considering they care about her so much. Though they do not want to tell Rean, as it first should be heard by Fee. Rean assures them that she is very much their classmate and therefore like family, so he'll do everything he can to ensure her safety. Finally, McBurn's room is left. Before entering, Rean gets an intense feeling. McBurn makes it clear that he doesn't care if Rean joins the Alliance or not. Rean wants to talk about the comment McBurn made in Bereahard, something about being mixed. McBurn doesn't really know how to explain it. Both have something different in terms of strength and nature mixed into them. He goes ahead and generates fire from his fingers. No augments, no magic, no artifacts. He wills it to appear, and it does. Given that Rean has his ogre power, it seems that it may just be a small part of him, but it's something foreign, unnatural, mixed into the body itself, not like the church's stigmas. Whilst McBurn acknowledges Rean has a little something similar, he can't explain it any further. So how much of McBurn is unnatural? All of him. One day maybe Rean will understand just what McBurn is talking about. Princess Alphen is a cute guest Crow mentioned earlier. She can't believe that Rean is actually here and wonders if he's real or not, or if this is a dream. Once they've caught up on the current events, Alphen tells Rean that Elise is not on this ship and may possibly be in the same place as her parents. It seems Alphen was kept on this ship so that she could speak with the rest of the people and keep their nerves calm during this war. Rean reminisces about the events that transpired 8 years ago, where he first used his ogre power to save Elise, and how he feels that he should probably put her first at this moment and do whatever it takes to save and protect her, even if it means betraying his own personal beliefs. As his honorary sister, Alphen demands that he gets a hold of himself. She knows Elise better than Rean and has already heard so much of what happened back then. Elise has shared her understanding of how that day inspired Rean to take up the sword, how traumatic it must have been, and whilst it may have been selfish of her, it meant that Rean's attention, guilt and responsibility were directed at her and no one else. It may not be the only reason, but it was a big part of why Elise left for St. Estrella. She didn't want Rean to keep feeling guilty because of her. She wanted to free him of his burden. Even when Rean joined Thors and made friends, Elise felt somewhat jealous and lonely, but she was so very happy for him too. Alphen tells Rean that of all people, Elise wants Rean to find true happiness and to carve out his own path. Poor Rean seems as though he hadn't realised how much everyone around him always tried to support him as much as he wishes to support them. Rean's power emanates, acquiring a new state of mind and the ability to transform into his ogre power at will with control. He finally perks up and thanks Alphen for being just like his real sister. He thanks her and tells her it's time to get going. Alphen looks over this and wishes him well on rescuing Elise, but there's no way he would leave his sister's best friend in prison on this ship. The plan is to make their way to the deck and use Valimar to make their escape. Making their way back to Rean's room, they notice a ventilation shaft which leads to one of the corridors away from the guest area. As soon as they make their way out, they are approached by a few soldiers. They take care of them together. Alfin's arts are amazing at this point. Further in the corridor, they encounter a few more soldiers, eventually reaching the stairs corridor to the deck. Once through, Blueblanc and Duvally have managed to cut them off. They didn't expect him to join the alliance, but running away with a princess? That is bold. It wasn't as though Alfin is being stolen away though. She, after all, was the one who whispered sweet nothings into Rean's ear and tempted him to run away with her. The passion is overwhelming. Blueblanc likens her to her brother. Whilst Alfin does agree with love being the truest form of beauty, she isn't quite as odd as Oliver. Duvally swiftly cuts their bonding off and a battle begins. Rean acknowledges that there is a small difference between their strengths and he should be able to break through. Of course, Duvally calls out Rean's arrogance and tells him to watch her. Rean rightly tells her that she is the one that is foolish and arrogant, calling on his ogre power whilst maintaining complete control. Once the battle is over, he picks Alfin up in a cradle and leaps over Duvally and Blueblanc, continuing the escape. As he continues to run with her in his arms, Zeno and Leonidas appear. Rean unleashes another move, creating some illusions and running straight past the two of them. Further down still, Altina tries to prevent them from escaping, pointing out that her suspicions of Rean being untoward were right. Rean tells her to stop making him out to be some sort of pervert all the time. Without stopping, he runs directly at Altina, lifts Alfin over his shoulder and blocks Altina's attack, shoving her to the side. Altina acknowledges that she may have underestimated Rean in more ways than one. Finally outside on the deck, Crow and McBurn appear, giving both an opportunity to see how Rean's power manifests. McBurn gives priority to Crow, and another fight ensues. Rean is able to defeat Crow in a one-on-one, however the rest of the alliance appear and Rean's ogre power phases out. Things are looking dire again. In come the Crimson Wings, with Toval, Sharon, Sarah and Claire dropping in first, cutting off the rest of the alliance. After a few meet and greets, the Crimson Wing flies back over the ship, this time delivering Victor Arcade to the deck. McBurn acknowledges his power and chooses him to fight, but just before that can happen, Oliver and Class 7 appear on board. Oliver is glad to see that Alfin is well and wonders if she enjoyed the scandalous elopement with Rean. She lets him know that he gave her the time of his life. They say hey to Crow and then wonder how to coordinate this face-off since both sides are likely even matched. Oliver suggests having a party instead of fighting. Blueblanc naturally agrees, followed by Sharon and Zeno. Duvally, of course, tells them to take this a bit more seriously. Soon after, Grianos and Vita show up. She suggests foregoing the fighting, and the groups separate themselves. As they begin to leave, Rean confirms Crow was the one who informed Toval of Rean's location earlier in the game. Crow also suggests that Rean acquires a new weapon, where Rean can use his 8 leaves 1 blade fighting style with Valimar. Finally, they all drop back onto the Crimson Wings, making their escape a success. Yes, that's the intermission done. What a roller coaster! We got a good amount of information about most of the Alliance's members and their current standings and responsibilities. We saved Princess Alvin, reunited with Oliver and Viscount Arcade, and were able to escape without any crazy battles. Well, yeah, most crazy battles. Thanks everyone for watching. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe and comment as there will be more videos coming up soon. Thanks again for the support. I'll see you on the next one. I hope you all have a beautiful day, night, wherever you are, and don't forget to continue moving forward relentlessly without looking back. Peace.